God's peace be upon you. Welcome to my third video. Appreciate you tuning in today. Fellow Muslims and Muslimas, as well as those who are interested in learning more about our faith of Islam. Hoping that you've seen my first two videos first. If not, please do so, in order so that you will understand where we're at this point. Otherwise, I may review a few things, but I pretty much like to continue to move on rather than repeat the same thing each time we talk. So, I will, of course, remind everybody this is a troll-free zone. I do sincerely hope that you will like and share my videos, and I absolutely welcome comments, but only constructive comments will be permitted to stay here. I'm not looking to deal with trolls harassing me or harassing anyone else here. This whole page, this whole experience is about growth and learning and positivity. It has no negative comments or hate of any kind is going to be tolerated here. You'll be blocked. Your comments will be erased. We're not playing with that. So trolls, find somewhere else to go, because you're not going to last here very long. Okay. Continuing on that. So I know I promised that, or at least I think I did, that I was going to share my revert story in my next edition. I still think we need to talk about a few more things first before I get to that. Okay? Because when you hear my revert story, it's going to be very clear why I'm Muslim. Right? But I can't necessarily expect what happened to me is going to happen to everybody. Okay? An actual miracle occurred in my life. A real actual miracle. And so that's kind of what brought me where I am. But I can't necessarily, they do happen, so it's possible, but my particular series of events, I'm hoping that, not everybody experiences what I did. So your approach may be different. So I want to add some more knowledge first to help you before, we get to that point. So, because you're going to wonder, okay, what's in it for me? Why would I want to convert? Right? So, now, of course, also, as I've said before, don't want to repeat myself, but another one of the purposes of my page here is to help build a bridge to those in the West who want to understand, but we need to overcome that brainwashing that you have, where anytime you hear a foreign language, especially Arabic, you automatically assume what you're hearing is bad. And that's been programmed into your brain by the mainstream media, by the educational system, by the institutions, because Islam is the truest and purest path to God. And most of these institutions are in the control of the Cabal, which means they're under control of Iblis, or aka Lucifer, which means they are evil. And the whole purpose of Iblis, aka Lucifer, his whole reason to exist is to drag as many people into hell as possible. It's a numbers game with him. So he wants to thwart anyone making any attempt to get closer to God. That's the last thing he wants. So he's going to then convince other people, and he does it through subtle ways, right? Increases their bank accounts. A lot of people get duped that way, and they get sucked in, and they become, next thing you know, they're all sock puppets for him. And, unfortunately, they compromise their immortal souls for this, but that's on them, okay? So we're gonna continue on here. So a couple of things to understand about, to learn a little bit more about our faith and understand the origins of our faith and how it starts. So, first of all, we believe that God, and Allah is the Arabic word for God. In fact, if you believe it or not, there are Christians that speak Arabic. There are Arabic-speaking Christians. There are Arabic-speaking Jews. If you got an Arabic translation of the New Testament, God is called Allah, because it's just the word for God. Just like in Spanish, the word for God is Dios. So if you got a Spanish Bible, God is Dios. Okay? So understand that. Erase the brainwashing. Okay? Allah is not bad. Allah is God. Okay? Just like when we say Allahu Akbar. That means God is great. Okay? Write that down. So that next time you hear it, and that American Western trigger goes off in your brain, and you think, oh, this is a terrible thing to say. Wait a minute. Look at your little paper. They said God is great. Oh, no, that's beautiful. Of course God is great. Bam. Okay? When you hear Bismillah Rahman Rahim, or just let's go with Bismillah. Bismillah means in the name of God. We say that pretty much on any kind of undertaking, because we recognize that God, the creator of all the heavens and the universe, has power over all things. And nothing can even occur or even exist without his blessing. So we say that quite a bit because we're acknowledging this. Okay? Another thing is inshallah. Inshallah means if it is the will of God. Okay? Because if the creator of all creation has decided that something is not going to happen, it's not going to happen. No matter how much you want it to, it's not going to happen. So, like for example, we try not to say I am definitely doing this or I am definitely doing that because we don't know. Okay? I could step out my apartment tomorrow morning and a helicopter could fall on me. And there goes all my plans. So I don't know. Only Allah knows. Only God knows. So we say inshallah, meaning if it is the will of God. If it's cool with him, then I can do this or I will do that. So that way you're not making promises, writing checks you can't cash, right? So those are just some phrases. Write them down so that you know what they are when you hear them, okay? When you hear Assalamu alaikum, that means God's peace be with you, okay? Again, it's a beautiful, beautiful greeting. And it's something that everybody says in church too, right? Peace be upon you and also with you. Please share your peace. It's no different. Salam, peace, okay? So again, let's continue here. Write those down so that you know these aren't scary words. It's just another language. No big deal. You can learn it on Golingo, right? You can learn it on a Rosetta Stone, okay? I actually, inshallah, if it is God's will, Allah's will, I will do that too, because I definitely would like to learn that language completely. So, anyways, let's go on. So, as far as our faith is as far as we believe, God, Allah, wrote what we call the Kitabul Bin. The Kitabul Bin is a book in which he chronicled everything that's going to happen. And he did this 50,000 years before he even created the universe. He wrote the Kitabul Bin. It is so detailed, he is aware of the falling of a single leaf on a tree at any given time, and everything else. Okay? Now, let's move ahead. Humanity, as we know it, can be traced back to a single pair of parents, and this has actually been scientifically proven, Adam and Eve. Okay? Now, our faith tells us that Adam was first created in Eden, in the garden. That is not a place in our terrestrial third dimension Earth as we know it. It's somewhere else, a different dimension, if you will. Okay? It's not the heavens where God resides and the angels reside, but it is not here in this world. It's not a place you can find here. It's in a completely different dimension. But there are angels there, yes, and it is a blessed place. It is a place with no evil, no infirmity, no sickness, nothing dies there. There's nothing foul there. Anyways, so this is where Adam and Eve, who as we know her, had lived together. So you know the story. If you're familiar with the Christian theology or Jewish theology, the whole story about the serpent, the tree, the devil tempting them. Now, let's go back a little bit before then. Here's the part that you aren't going to learn from the Bible. You're only going to learn this from the Quran, the Holy Quran, which is why you absolutely need to read it. Okay? Before God even created Adam, okay, there was another race of beings on this planet. They were called the jinn. Jinn, or DJINN. Now, the jinn, like humans, have free will. They can choose whether they obey God or disobey God. Unlike angels. Angels cannot choose to disobey God. They are completely subservient to Him 100%. So the jinn mostly lived on Earth. This is where they lived, here, before we did. Now, it got to a point where they were really not showing a lot of appreciation for this gift of the world that He had given them, that God had given them. They were causing a lot of destruction. They were fighting amongst themselves. They have their own tribes, their own governments, their own worlds, their own cities, and so forth. And they were really tearing the place apart. So He was starting to get really fed up. Now, there was one jinn that was very special, more powerful than any of the other jinns. And he was very special because this particular jinn was Muslim. Now, understand the meaning of Muslim at this time. This is thousands of years before our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So the word Muslim simply means subservient to God's will. Period. So this is why we say, like, back during the times of Moses, when he was leading the children of Israel, the children of Judah, right? Children of Israel were Jewish. Those that believed in God and believed in the last day and followed the Torah, they were considered Muslim. Muslim meaning subservient to God's will. Okay? It's a definition. It's not a label, it's a definition. Islam is called peace. The peace by submission to God's will. So this is the path that they followed. Same thing with Jesus, when Jesus taught His ministry. Anyone that followed and believed in God and worshipped God and believed in the last day was considered Muslim because they were subservient to God's will. So again, it doesn't mean necessarily they were following the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because at that time he wasn't born yet. But they were subservient to God's will. And this is how we recognize them. This is how we recognize the people of the book, okay? Anyways, you can also rewrite this or re-listen to this later if you need to catch up. So, all right, so Adam. Okay, so anyways, there's this very special jinn before Adam was created, before we were created. And this special jinn worshipped God in every corner of the universe. He prayed to Him, here, there, everywhere. He flew all over the universe and prayed to God, and prayed to God, and prayed to God. He prayed to God so much that God elevated his status to the point where He brought this jinn to stand among the ranks of angels. He himself wasn't an angel. They're completely different beings than jinn. But he was given that level of honor, that level of rank. Now this jinn's name was Iblis. Okay? And he was an absolute, he was a really, really good, pious jinn at this time in history. Now, while the earth was being torn apart by these evil jinn, okay, God made an announcement that He was thinking of cleaning house, that He was not happy with what was going on down here. So he said, I am going to select a new, what's the word we're looking for here? Vicegerent or steward. I'm going to elect a new steward for that world, for Earth. Well, Iblis heard this and said, hey, wow, sounds like there's another promotion coming. I'd love that. So he said, let me do something that would really, really make me stand out. So he went to God and he said, hey, why don't you lend me a legion of angels? I'll go down to that earth and we'll clean house. We'll get rid of all those troublemakers. We'll get rid of all of those bad jinn that are causing trouble. We'll clean house. God said, okay, you have my permission. So Iblis, with a legion of angels, came down to earth, and they almost completely wiped out the jinn. Now realize he's one of them. He almost completely wiped out his own race. But because they were mostly bad. They were terrible, awful, terrible people, terrible beings. So, while he was down here, cleaning up in the in heaven, or rather in the garden, in Eden, God created Adam. Now he created Adam out of, we say, dust or clay, right? So he created Adam out of earth, out of clay, and Iblis, and we don't know how long it took. Iblis and the angels come back to heaven victorious, of course. Now here he is thinking he's getting a promotion, and instead, God says to his the angelic host, including Iblis, brings Adam before them all and says, "This is the new steward. This is going to be the new steward of earth." Well, Iblis was shocked. Jaw hit the floor. He's like, "What? Wait a minute." He thought he was a shoo-in for that. He was going to get the position. It's like, now you made this, and then he takes a look at Adam. He's like, "That? This pitiful thing? This flesh and blood, scrap that wouldn't last 2 minutes with me in a ring? This pathetic thing is what you're sending to earth to." It's like, not me. It's like, look what I just did for you. And God was like, "No, this is going to be the new steward. I have placed him in a state above all of you." And he commanded the angels and Iblis to kneel before Adam as a token of their acknowledgement of him being elevated in a status above them. Now, he wasn't meaning a status physically, because physically Adam was not very impressive compared to angels and Iblis. Physically, no. But he had elevated him in a level of spirit that was higher than them, because he gave Adam the power, he gave Adam intellect and the ability to understand things. Before he presented them to them, he had taught Adam the nature of things, and he had taught him the names of all of the angels. The angels didn't even know their own names. And so when he asked the angels, "Do you know who you are?" And the angels said, "No, we know nothing of the unknown. We know nothing except that which you've told us." And so when he turned to Adam and said, "Tell them who they are," and Adam did, they were surprised. They were impressed. Now, let me backtrack a bit. Before God created man, the angels were concerned about it. They said, "Why would you make a being, a free will being, that has the capacity for destruction, that has the capacity to hate, that has the capacity of disobedience?" They were concerned that we would be no better than the jinn that were tearing the world up. They were thinking, why are you going to make something just like that? God told them, "Don't ask me. I know. I know what you don't know." So anyways, moving ahead, when they discovered that Adam had this hidden knowledge that they didn't, they understood what God meant when he said, "I know what you don't know." So they realized that man has the capability to rise and to become more than what he starts off as. He has the capacity to grow. And so anyways, Iblis refused to bow, refused to kneel. He considered Adam to be inferior to him. He was not impressed by Adam's intellect, and he just refused to obey. He felt upset. He felt cheated. He felt like this was, that Adam had taken something from him. He felt jealous, arrogant. And so at that point, God kicked him out of the garden, said, "Get thee down from here." At that moment, okay, Iblis at that moment became Satan. Okay, so this goes against what the church says, because the Christians, you believe that that Satan was an angel. No, he wasn't. He was a jinn. He was considered amongst their ranks. He was honored like one of them, but he isn't, because angels don't have free will. There was never a war in heaven. Angels don't fight each other, ever. period. They're not capable of it. They're not given that ability. That's something that only we can do and jinn can do. So Iblis was actually, no, he was kicked out of heaven, but not out of the garden. Sorry about that. So you can criticize me later, but understand. So here we go. So now Adam and Eve are now in the garden. Now, here's the thing. Now, this is in Quran and Hadith, so you can research this. So what did I just say? Adam was in the garden with Eve, but God had already told them that Adam was going to be the new steward of earth. Think about that for a minute. This is critical. This is critical. God knew Adam was heading to earth. God knew he was going to take Adam out of the garden, that Adam was going to be taken out of the garden and sent to earth before he even created Adam. He already knew this. He always intended for this to happen. Okay? Now, here we go with the story that Christians already know, and Jews, that Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit because the devil tempted them. Satan tempted them. And of course, as soon as they ate the fruit, they became ashamed, tried to cover themselves up with leaves. God was like, what are you doing? And then he's like, wait a minute, did you eat from that tree I told you not to eat from? And they said, yes, and he said, okay. And that was when Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, along with Iblis, aka Satan. And they were sent down to earth, all of them. Now, God at that point was ready to destroy the devil, was ready to destroy Iblis, but Iblis begged him. He said, please, wait. It's like, grant me respite. God said, very well, I grant you respite until the day of atonement. You will not die. So Satan is immortal and cannot die until the day of judgment. And Satan said, okay, but now that you've done that for me, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you and prove to you that you are wrong about man. I'm going to tempt them. From every direction, I'm going to come at them. I will never tire. I will never sleep. I will keep tempting them from every corner, and I will bring as many of his children to hell with me as possible. God said, do as you will, but you will have no power over my servants. Okay? So now we're done with the devil. Okay? Meanwhile, Adam begged God to forgive them. Turn to God in repentance. And in that conversation, Adam turned to God and said, can I ask you something? When you told us not to eat from that tree, you knew already that we were going to do it, didn't you? You already knew we were going to do it before it even happened. And God said yes. And so then Adam begged him, well then, can you please forgive us? Can you forgive us and let us come home someday? Adam and God told him, yes, I forgive you. And they made the covenant right there at that moment. So this is why Muslims don't believe in original sin. Now, honestly, if you look at the story in the Bible about Adam's creation, right? It's not as specific as in the Quran, but as a Christian knows that God is all-knowing, all-seeing. God knows everything, past, present, and future. So again, God knew Adam and Eve were going to sin before he even created them. So how is he going to blame them for something they were destined to do? Furthermore, something they had to do. Because if they didn't sin, they never would have left the garden. They never would have come to earth and become mortal. It was part of the human experience. to have that choice. The choice to sin was the very first act of free will that Adam and Eve had committed. And this showed that they were now ready to begin life on earth, because now they were ready to take the responsibility for making their own choices. When they lived in the garden, they were completely innocent. Now that innocence was lost. Now there is good and evil, there is retribution, there is responsibility. Now the test has begun, which is what earth is. Our life on earth is a test. Okay? It is a test to see if we are worthy of what God has awaiting for us in the garden. And believe me, you want it. Believe me, you do. So, this is why we don't believe in original sin, because God forgave Adam. How could he not? I mean, in a way, this was all, he was only doing what he was supposed to do. I mean, it was all predestined. So, that is why when we are born innocent. Okay? Babies are not born with original sin. There is no original sin. It is a lie. It is intended to enslave humankind and make you guilty. It's part of a big guilt trip. We don't believe in it. You're born with a clean slate. We all were. Now, one more thing about us. The truth of our souls. Adam and Eve touched down on earth somewhere around 6,000 years ago. We don't have the exact dates, but that's pretty close according to all the scholars and all the information. That's about as close as they're going to get. About 6,000 years ago. Now, you might say, oh, well, there are, there fossils of ape men and stuff that go back 250,000 years. What's up with that? There were creatures here, yes, humanoid type creatures, but they have nothing to do with us. Okay? Just like all the other things that were here before, dinosaurs and so forth, they have nothing to do with us. Our humans are only about 6,000 years old. Anything that has been built before us, it wasn't us. We didn't do it. They weren't the children of Adam. Okay? And there is no missing link that connects the children of Adam to the ape men. Science has been looking for it for decades, centuries maybe even, and they've never found it because it doesn't exist. All right? We didn't evolve from apes. Plain and simple. We're all children of Adam. So, Adam and Eve touched down about 6,000 years ago, and at that moment, Adam asked God, what will happen to to the children? What will happen to my progeny? So at that moment, God pulled every single soul that is ever going to exist out of Adam's back at that moment. So at that moment, all of us were created then. We were all created 6,000 years ago. Now you're looking at yourself like, I don't know, I don't look like I'm 6,000 years old. This isn't you. This isn't me. Okay? This is a leased vehicle that we're in. That's all this is. This body is a leased vehicle. If you ever seen Avatar, this is our avatar. It's not us. The consciousness that us, the soul, as we call it in Islam, the ruh, al-ruh, that was created 6,000 years ago. Okay? Now, of course, at that time, we had no bodies to go in, so where we were, I have no idea. That's part of the unknown. God is, Lord of the seen and the unseen, so that's part of the unseen. Not really important, okay? But we were all created at that time, and we were all subservient to God at that moment. When God asked all of us, who is your Lord? We all replied together, you are our Lord. We knew who God was, who Allah was. We knew it. That is what is called fitra. It is the built-in understanding and knowledge of our creation. It is an inborn part. It's part of us. It's part of our soul. It's part of it's built in. It's like burned into our motherboard. Okay. So this is why when somebody converts to Islam, we call it revert. Because your original state, when we were all created, our souls were created completely subservient to God's will. What is the definition of subservient to God's will? Muslim. So we were already originally created Muslim. We were all created subservient to God's will. So when you convert to Islam, we say you're actually reverting. You're returning to your original state, the original state of your soul when you were first created. You're returning to what you once were. That's why we call it a revert, not a convert. It's not like you're going to be something that you never were before. You were this once. You're just coming back to it. Okay? So, that's, a good deal of content there, a lot to digest. And you've heard a lot from me, and you're going to hear a lot more from me. You're going to want to hear the next story, which is the story of how I reverted, what brought me to Islam, the path. And there's a lot of them, a lot of great stories on YouTube, revert stories. So one of the other things I'm going to start doing too is, now that you're starting to get familiar with some of the terms and you're slowly familiarizing yourself with the language, of course, other Muslims and brothers and sisters from all over the world, I'm sure this is all nothing new to you, but for those that are new to this, there's a couple of videos that I'd really like you to see, 2 in particular. So I'm going to drop those links in the comments. One of them, very special guy. His name is Dr. Omar Zaid, and he is incredible. Wait till you hear his story. It is mind-blowing, okay? He's an American like me that reverted, and he has got a story for you that is going to blow your mind. And then the other is another American who was an atheist, who is also a physicist, a scientist. And the Quran proved to him the existence of God through science. So you're going to want to hear that story too, because that's also another mind-blowing story. He talks about the first and second law of thermodynamics, and it's mind-blowing stuff. So I'm going to drop those 2 videos, and one of them is from Sajid Lipman's page, and he's a really great Muslim. He studied abroad for years in Saudi, and he's another American revert. So I definitely recommend following him and watching his stuff. And then the other is from another page by the 3 Muslims. Awesome guys, Fiyad, Rami, and Angel. Really great guys. They've got a lot of great content. They're doing great dawah. Dawah's ministry, okay, ministry, dawah. They're doing a lot of great work, and they've got a lot of great content. So I'd recommend you follow both of those guys to also learn more, okay? I'm going to drop those links below at some point soon, inshallah. And inshallah, in my next video, we'll get into how I got started on this path and how God finally called me, okay? And I sincerely hope that He also calls you, because, well, we'll get to the story about how that changed my life, and this is really what I hope for all of you too. I want your hearts to be filled, and I want you to feel fulfilled. So, thank you for tuning in. Peace be upon you. Lord's peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, and have a great night.